History begins with the fact that the world before the creation of heaven and earth was one great sea and a huge island. They embodied the blessings of the goddess, ruling in those lands, a centuner that people worship to this day. It was a great place that every night, like a bright star, sparkles with the luxury of aristocrats. However, in such a world, there was at least one garbage pit in which all the dirt gathered from different corners. In the slums of Kimura, several men surrounded the guy, urging him not to think about running away again. An elderly man went to Abel, hanging over him, and with a threat in his voice asking if he was really dumb. The other immediately grabbed him by the chest. When suddenly the guy loudly asked not to touch him, the others burst into a laughter. However, this wretch turned out to be a woman, after which the eyes of the men immediately lit up when they understood their capabilities. Some of them said that if you look closely, her face of course was terrible, but the body was very attractive. The girl firmly decided that she would not allow them to touch her, after which she sharply waved a bottle. She immediately heard insults addressed to her, but, holding the broken bottle in her hands tightly, ordered them not to approach. However, this did not frighten the elderly man, because of which he sharply pushed her, not allowing us to use the weapon. He stated that he regretted it like an orphan and took it to him, but in the end there was no gratitude nor a word or deed. He regretted her, capable of feeding himself only by cleaning shoes, and thought to forget about everything, but it seems not worth it. When the bottle slipped out of the girl's hands, the man instantly reacted and hit her with his fist in the face. Then he stated that he was giving her a week for which she should return a lot of money for their patronage, and if the girl does not do this, then she will have to deal not with shoes, but with the men who have regretted her now. A few days later, on San Selena Square, the girl sat on her knees, cleaned the shoes with one aristocrat. She did not know who was sitting in front of her, thinking how to be, because she had less than 2 days left to return the money. She must find money at all costs, otherwise she will have to be very tight, and not the fact that she can survive. In the best case, she will be sent to some kind of brothel, but even this thought caused her disgust. As soon as she thought about it, the man sitting in front of her, along with her thoughts, said that he would die better. He added that it would be much better than taking Lucretia by the hand and join the ceremonial hall. Hearing the voice of the aristocrat, the girl raised her head, after which she realized what nobler she cleaned the shoes. At first she thought that this could not be, but the appearance of this man accurately issued Cesare Bonaparte in him, the brightest star of the nobility of Santnara, and the protagonist of countless love scandals, who met his fate. She turned out to be the youngest daughter of the family of Della Valle, Lucretia, who attracted close attention to the public. She chose to her husband Cesare, the only heir to Bonaparte, referring exclusively to the marriage contract. It was compiled by families in the distant past, and now everyone congratulated her on the fact that unrequited love had fruit. Having crumpled the newspaper, Cesare said that she was spent on what was needed, because he knew that Lucretia participated in this article. Then the man took out a cigar, with a smile adding that he knew that she was for a woman, but could not do anything about it. At this time, Abel thought she was definitely not mistaken, and who would have thought that she would be able to meet such an important bump? The girl did not know how to do it better, deciding to first explain her situation and ask for help. Perhaps he will take pity on her and drop a couple of gold coins, thereby simplifying her problem. Having made a puff, Cesare said that he would still have to act in accordance with the plan that he came up with earlier. He suggested finding a decent girl and selling her Della Valle. Abel immediately realized that it could be her chance. After all, it was not just an opportunity to deal with everything. Having received a couple of gold coins, it was a chance for a better life. At that very moment, she laid her hand on her chest, offering to sell her, because she will become the most expensive lady in Santnara. Cesare, who had not paid attention to the cleaner of the shoes before, looked at her with surprise. The guy who was sitting nearby asked what she was talking about, because she did not expect that she would get into the conversation. Cesare, with a smirk, asked that you are not now the shoe cleaners have forgotten how to determine the class of people by shoes. Clutching a rag tightly, the girl replied that she correctly defined everything, after which she introduced herself as Adele Vivi. She only wanted to say that it is better than anyone else can play this role so much necessary for him. The smile disappeared from his face when he asked where such confidence in understanding his goals came from. Adele said that he needed a fake daughter Bonaparte, whom he can send to Delaval's family instead of himself. When asked from whom she heard this, the girl replied that she made such a conclusion after reading the newspaper. In the marriage agreement, released by Delaval, only their kind appears, but there were no specific names. And therefore, he probably thought that he could free himself from a political marriage in a very cunning way. Then, perhaps, it will be possible to deceive everyone by buying a suitable girl and calling her the secret daughter of Seven Bonaparte. Well, a girl is certainly needed, since in the family of Delaval there was another unmarried son who needs a bride. Judd was delighted, as she guessed everything, only reading the newspaper, considering it extremely incredible. Cesare, with a stone face, asked him to stop. I decide that they wasted time, talking with this girl. Great scientists have come from the genus Vale, from time immemorial. They are not the people who can be sophisticated by the cleaner of the shoes. Adele asked that if she did not barely know how to read at all. Such a statement made the man with surprise to freeze. Why did he ask if she had just spoke Penin in the language? The girl replied that Algis also knew. When asked how she was able to learn foreign languages, she replied that she read books in a public library. Hearing this, Cesare laughed nervously. I said that's such a feeling, as if a naval goddess made fun of him. Then, he carefully looked at the girl, said that in this situation, the problem is not only in intelligence. First of all, the goods for sale should look like that, what he cannot say about it now. Then the men rose from their seat, and Cesare said that she was disqualified, after which he was about to leave. Adele understood that with every step, she was losing the opportunity to avoid a terrible fate in the slums of Timor. She asked them to stop, after which she began to tear off the glued skin, thereby shocking the men. A second later, a beautiful girl looked at them, who asked if they intended to disqualify her. Judd said that when she offered to pretend to be Sister Cesare, he first thought that it was unthinkable nonsense. But, having looked now, and the color of the hair and the color of the eyes are quite similar, and now it was just perfect. The man asked whether she was a noblewoman. She answered negatively, and when asked about her parents, the girl replied that she was an orphan. Cesare covered his mouth with his hand and frowned, saying that in this case he was really curious to try to crank it. Although it did not look like she was an ordinary fool who was not aware that if she was opened, she would certainly kill. Therefore, he asked why she needed this. With an absolutely calm face, Adele lied, answering that she was hungry. At that very moment, the man turned around, put his hands in his pocket, and then stated that, be that as it may, he agreed. After that, the man quoted Dante, saying that he, Cesare, sends her. The girl immediately realized what was happening. She immediately answered with another quote that they would meet again in the place where they wanted each other. Cesare grinned, thinking that she had even recognized a quote from the play, and it seemed that he found an extremely useful woman. In the end, he asked her to come to the Bonaparte estate until tomorrow's noon, and Adele could not believe it. Sitting in her house, she thought that Cesare accepted her offer, and she would not have to worry about a brothel. That's just Cleric, her only friend, she cannot tell. But now there was no way. She first wanted to share with her, but, apparently, today, she is busy, so they will not be able to see again. Adele decided to leave her a letter, when suddenly she was frightened by a sharp sound of a twitching door handle outside the room. And at that very moment, her body was numb when she heard a familiar voice, and immediately realized who came to her. He was the same elderly man who was expecting money from her. Entering the room, he stated that he knew that it would be so. He just went to check it, but found that she had already prepared to run without paying them for patronage. At that very moment, he grabbed her hand tightly, deciding to get a fee right now, but Adele escaped sharply. Then she ran to the window while the old man insulted her, ordering her to go back, but she did not listen to him. With a deft movement, the girl opened the window, finally hearing the question of where she was going to run. Adele immediately remembered the question of Cesare. Why did she need it if she knows in advance that in case of opening she would be killed? However, now she did not care if she would die, because now the most important thing was to escape away from this pit. After all, if possible, she will only be glad to risk her life for this. After which, Adele rushed to run. The next day, she was greeted by Ernst, a butler at the Bonaparte estate, who was waiting for her arrival. Standing in front of a huge gate, he asked her to enter, adding that the head of the family was already waiting for her person. A few minutes later, the girl stood in front of Cesare, completely wet from the rain and dirt, which fell into recently. The man noticed that she has a rather unfortunate vidoc, which does not correspond to the image of Bonaparte's daughter at all. With her covered with malice, he asked his beloved younger sister, how did it happen that she was so wet? Then a smile appeared on his face when he asked not to be shy and share this story with his older brother. Having lowered his head, Adele replied that the culprit of this is Mr. Nino, an old man who was managing a bunch of shoes cleaners. He pursues her due to overdue payment for patronage, and he will definitely not stop until he receives a fee. Cesare abruptly interrupted the girl's story, saying that that old man was dead. Hearing this, the shock immediately reflected on the face of Adele. The man decided to go from afar, saying that today it was just a terrible rain, and in confirmation of this, looked out the window. Then he explained that he heard that the accuracy was only strong, that one of the shacks in Camorra could not stand it and collapsed. Death due to an accident in the slums is a rather common thing, so no one will understand this particularly. Then the man frowned, asking if there was still some kind of bug, capable of preventing them from enormous plans. Adele shuddered, answering negatively, although she realized that in death, Nino definitely could not do without the participation of Cesare. Suddenly, he asked if he just waved his hand at it. Such a question immediately made the girl be worried. She tried to understand what he was saying, because it looked like he knew about cleric, but she did nothing bad. Cesare asked her not to worry so much, because she had nothing to worry about until the plan went crashed. The smile returned to his face again when he said that since the matter was settled, you can go to the most important thing. She already knows the goal, to seduce the son of the family Delavelle and marry him using all her charm, starting with its body movements and voluminous knowledge, to speak and ending with the tips of the fingers and legs. It should become an ideal Bonaparte to be able to fool the entire secular society of Fernati, leaving no doubt. The preparation period is 3 months, and during this time, she must become a lady, which he can recognize as her sister. However, if this does not happen, the whole plan to go to the trash, which is why both of them will have far from sweet. Adele mentally asked herself that if the plans of the truth fall asleep, whether she would go to the trash after him. Then she agreed when she heard the question why she would not even deign to ask why the term is 3 months. She suggested that he plans to fit this event under the date of reception in honor of his birthday. And this was true. Approaching her, Cesare said that she still has a talent in revealing his plans for newspaper articles alone. The man added that he had the feeling as if she knew about his family even more than himself, that a little scared. Then he slightly raised her head, his chin took up. Suppose that still there should be another reason for this. With a smile on his face, the man asked with interest whether it could be that she is interested in him, as in a man. He fully understands her feelings, although she is a simple rustic of a slum who has only a sweet face. The newfound brother must have seen almost the Messiah who was sent to her by the marine god, and to which I really want to be nailed in order to find the very salvation that she wanted and waited all her life. However, Cesare decided to warn her that he did not want to see her in his bedroom in the middle of the night, no matter how she wanted him. With a stone expression on her face, the girl thanked him for the advice, clarifying that he was absolutely not interesting to her as a man. Then she turned her gaze, thinking that he was a handsome man, but it seems a little crazy, and it was a little scary. Suddenly, Cesare laughed loudly, saying that her facial expression was just something that could be admired for a long time. But he warned, because this has already happened. Adele replied that she would definitely keep this in mind. She turned to him as a lord, which is why the man specified that now she should turn to him as her brother. Adele immediately fulfilled his request, for which the man decided to praise her, continuing to imposingly smoke a cigar. Then he announced that from that moment, she was Adelaide Bonaparte, and henceforth she should not use her former name. She is also 5 years younger than him. All this time she lived in a distant cabal, somewhere around the sea, considering herself a commoner. However, he did not come up with the reason to explain why she decided to come here alone, deciding to provide it to her. The girl realized that, explaining the reason why she became Bonaparte, she would have to adapt to the situation. Adelaida asked if he intended to devote to their plans, and the chairman, who was supposed to know about it. Eva Bonaparte is a grandmother Cesare and chairman of Signoria. At the moment, she is the most important person in Parliament. Without her consent, it would be impossible to even start planning this, and Cesare knew about it like no other. The man replied that his dawning mistress was so eager to see her grandchildren that he was ready to accept Lucretia with hugs. Adelaide noted that the chairman supports their marriage, and this is ranging with the original plans of Cesare. Suddenly, the man asked. He was interested in something else, because it seems to him the most important thing is left without attention. Looking at her incomprehensible face, he explained that we are talking about his parents, because she is also their daughter. Since she was going to pretend to be his sister, it is worth immediately finding out about this, so she had to ask. But there is at least one who does not know in Santnara, because there were rumors that his parents were distraught from love. Because of this, they fled, abandoning both their families and a small child, leaving him to his grandmother. Adelaide said that she heard only that in the year when he was 9 years old, they moved, abandoning him. The man grinned, after which he got up from his place, answering that additional explanations were not required. Then they will say that his parents were distraught for the second time and gave birth to her. After that, he decided to finish today. Opening the door, Cesare explained that her personal maid was waiting for the door, so she just needs to follow her. However, Adelaide was in no hurry to leave. I feel that Cesare did not say everything yet, and therefore humbly listened to her brother. He added that he wants to believe that, in their next meeting, she will be able to demonstrate a more appropriate image. He is impatiently awaiting great progress in her changes, and will soon expect to see a true lady. Outside the door, she was expected by a phony, who stated that she was appointed a maid, and that she was a great honor to serve her. Then she took Adelaide to her room, explaining that now she belongs to her. The girl looked around the room. Effany explained that Bonaparte reject luxury, so the decoration cannot be called chic or rich. However, she still will not be uncomfortable here, since there are all the necessary things for a pleasant life. Although she will agree that for the chambers of the lady this is too modest, for Adelaide this place was like paradise. While she was thinking about this, Ethany politely asked her to turn to her freely, as she is higher than her in status. From tomorrow, her etiquette will begin, because if she caught a cold, this will become a big problem. Then the maid took her into the bath, saying that she would help her wash. Such a statement surprised the girl. Having started, she began to stutter involuntarily, saying that everything is fine, and she can wash herself on her own. With a tired look, the maid explained that aristocrats do not take the bath on their own. This is one of the parts of training. She needed to follow the rules, because all her words, directed towards her, are not a request, but a specific order. Adelaide reluctantly agreed, after which she thanked the maid, starting to slowly take off her clothes. When dirty things fell to the ground, Ethony flinched and looked with horror at the battered body hiding behind her clothes. Adelaida screamed that the bruises would quickly succeed, and she was sure of this, because she was often beaten, but there were no flaws. Then she asked in a more quiet and calm voice whether she would report on this, because she was obliged to report everything. At that very moment, the girl was frightened that Cesare would consider her body ugly to tear the contract, throwing her away. Ethony replied that the contract between her and the young master would end after the wedding with the son of Della Valle, not earlier. Until that moment, everything that is required of it is not to be revealed by the young master of their kind, and to study approximately. The maid immediately turned around, adding that even if her wounds dragged on, she was too exhausted that she needed to be fixed. However, now she should focus on restoring her health, starting with the adoption of a hot bath. The maid decided to repeat again that she is now Lady Bonaparte, and therefore should look flawless in front of everyone. After some time, when night came, Cesare and decided to ask what she could say about his sister. Ethany replied that the state of her health leaves much to be desired, and many traces of beatings were also found on the body. The man was surprised to answer that the pearl with chips costs almost nothing, which began to doubt. The maid explained that this trauma, which, with sequential treatment, will completely leave without leaving the trace. When the lady gains a little weight, her beauty will overshadow many, and no one even guesses that she was beaten by someone. Cesare thoughtfully said that she was now beautiful, after which he added with a smile that he was sorry that they were relatives. Ethone flinched, starting to be indignant, but the man asked her not to worry because he would not touch her. But he explained this by the fact that she would die anyway as soon as his problem is solved, so there is no sense in this. Late night, Adelaide woke up from an old habit, as it was very dangerous to fall asleep at night before. Outside the window, she noticed a dozen ships that returned to the port with the catch, which means that morning will come soon. Usually, just at this time, fishing vessels that worked all night go to the harbor to drop the load. Soon, some fishermen will begin to distribute fish to poor and needy fish, which they could not sell in the market. She herself woke up at dawn every day, staggering along the pier in the hope of having time for a distribution. But now, everything is different. When her life became luxurious, the girl asked herself out loud whether she could do it completely. However, now she was firmly sure that she was unlikely to be able to fall asleep again, so she reached for the book. The book story tightened it so much that she read until the morning, not noticing how the sun completely lit up her room. At that very moment, Ethone entered her chambers, with a slight surprise, noting that she was already awake at such a time. She decided to clarify whether she was a sleeping place, for which it turned out that she just woke up quite early. Having put aside the book, Adelaide asked with sincere interest what she had to do now, preparing to study. The maid noted that she was enthusiastic, but from today she will not have a single free hour in the schedule. However, they will start the day with a meal, after which they headed to the dining room, where the table was already covered with various food. Adelaide could not believe her eyes, because before she ate quite terribly, and sometimes she was starving. Ethone pushed back the chair, offering her to sit here, after which she asked if she had any special preferences. Crouching, the girl replied that she did not really like rotten, but, in general, anything would go away because she can eat insects. The maid concluded that there is no preference in food at all, and this is a good quality for a noble lady who is welcome. Then the woman began to explain that the table etiquette is one of the obligatory skills for the nobles. Adelaide nodded in response. The maid continued that this can be called the basis of the foundations, and starting a meal, always use the most extreme devices. A sanka needs to be kept evenly. The chin is lifted higher. Also, the elbows should never touch the countertops. During the meal, it is not allowed to hold both hands under the table. Ethone noticed that Adelaide was fine. Then she asked me to try the dish. The girl slowly chopped the meat on the fork and then laid it in her mouth. When she began to chew, her eyes immediately opened, and her face blushed from how tasty the dish was. Then there were beef carpaccio with the addition of arugula and celery, linguine with mackerel and sea ear, and in the end there was a plague with potato gratin and tomato sauce. But for Adelaide's, every dish is great. She was ready to even get plates, because it was the first time in her life when she ate something so delightful. But the girl immediately shuddered, asking herself whether she ate too eagerly, like a starving vagabond. However, Ethne was satisfied with what she saw, saying that she was very glad to see that the lady had a very good appetite. She also stated that for some time she should take food more than 4 times a day, because the lady should be in the body. After a meal, they walked along the corridor, while the maid said that now she would conduct her excursion in the mansion. She showed her a library, a reception, picture gallery, a billiard room, and a refectory from which they had just left. The woman also explained that in the central zone of the first floor there is Cesare's cabinet if he needs a lady, and if for some reason she will need to visit him, then she must come in without knocking. This is the rule. I decided to clarify Adelaide if something else that she should beware during the training in the mansion. Ethne thought, before answering, that it was better to inform her of this now, so that the lady was definitely in the know. The circle of people who know about the contract between her and the young master includes only 6 people with her. However, a few days later, the number will increase to 7. This person will become a teacher in etiquette, Madame Flavia. It is somewhat strict, but at the same time, Madame has better competence, so you need to listen to it very carefully. Adelaida knew that everything would not be so simple, so she asked how Madame should be greeted at the meeting. Ethne liked that she asks the correct questions, so she replied that she should learn to greet. Then she began to show that she needed to hold a skirt, then bent her legs in her knees, leaving her back straight. Adelaide, without wasting time, exactly repeated the movement of the maid, after which she asked if she did the right thing. Ithoni was dumbfounded by the grace with which the girl was moving, after which she replied that she quickly grabs everything. Toward evening, when the girl was in bed, the maid said that she had tried very well today. When they wished each other good night, Adelaide was left alone. She was very tired, but she could not fall asleep quickly. To close her eyes, she thought about silence. Now there were no more screams and noise that were her companions. Now none of this came in a long time, because of which she was surprisingly calm and easy at heart, albeit temporarily. It turns out that there is a world where it is calm and good. There is hot food, sleep in silence, and for someone this is everyday life. When Adelaide fell asleep, she dreamed of huge waves, and some unfamiliar otherworldly voice urged her to run away. She opened her eyes from the fact that a phony burst into the room, urging her loudly to wake up and quickly rise. Without wasting time, the woman stated that trouble had happened. She needed to immediately hurry and gather. She explained that Madame Flavia unexpectedly arrived in the mansion on a visit a few days earlier. They did not have time left, so for starters, and you need to throw something. With these words, she gave her a cloak. Adelaide wrapped her eyes, allowing me to put on a cloak, while asking what happened early in the morning. However, she did not have time to finish, because behind them, the door opened with a creak, forcing the girls to turn around with horror. On the threshold stood a woman aged with sharp features, carefully examining the room, and Adelaide, a noble old family who, for several generations, who served the Bonaparte, Laurendon to the family. But of course, Flavia Laurendon was the most loud name in secular circles, which still had not subsided. Firstly, it was known that due to its beauty and elegance resembled a work of art. And secondly, her character and a serious attitude to the matter were scared of many, and this case was no exception. The woman also attacked Adelaide, saying that this is shamelessness and inappropriate appearance, because of which she shuddered. The girl hastened to apologize, trying to justify her behavior, but Flavia said she did not allow to say. The woman began to express her indignation that she should teach something a nearby, that even the manor does not know. Adelaide could not fully understand her motives, because what she wants from her if she had just forbidden to answer. Suddenly behind her, a familiar male voice said that if she knew etiquette, Madame would definitely not be called. It was Cesare, who added with a smile that he did not think that Madame Flavia would deign to visit them to such an early. The woman immediately headed in his direction, loudly asking permission to say something about Adelaide. However, the man interrupted her dissatisfaction, kissing her on the cheek, saying to her that at first he would greet the dear Madame. He decided to distract her a little from the topic, asking whether she slept last night. She answered in the affirmative. Then Cesare smiled, said that he would be so glad. She joined him at breakfast. But if she had time, Flavia immediately agreed, because if he invites her, she is free at any moment to share a meal with him. The man was glad of such an answer, but the woman could not understand his smile, because of which she was a little nervous. Then she laid her hand on her head, said that the master was really incredibly resourceful. He could reassure her. Cesare asked, "Didn't the lady give him their hearts for this reason?" After which his gaze moved. He looked at Adelaide, who did not take his gaze from him, silently asking what he was seeking from Flavia. Then the man smiled again, asking her whether she was preparing to take a bath. Then they should have entered later. The woman was outraged by such a statement, because the master should not say such so inadvertently. What will he do if this one hears and invents all sorts of nonsense? But it would be nice to know the position of this personally. Cesare said that the expression of her face says that she certainly would not invent anything, even touched his male ego. The woman was dumbfounded by such behavior, after which she asked how she dared to raise her eyes. At that very moment she shuddered, after which she quickly headed towards the girl, noticing something on her body. With a sharp movement, she pulled the edge of the dressing gown, exposing her shoulder, noticing terrible bruises, thereby surprising Adelaide. With a dismissive look, she asked what kind of ugly traces that should not be on the body of a noble lady. The girl immediately covered herself, answering that nothing serious. The bruises would soon come down, and there would be no flaws. She added that this would definitely not become an obstacle in their plan. Caesar listened carefully, but said nothing. Flavia turned sharply, shouting the master that this bastard would not work, because they don't even know where she was hanging around. Not only did the poor drunks be beaten by the poor, while she was trading her body, so terrible scars remained. Even among the lower class, it is the bottom, and people like it are lazy and do not have an internal rod to become a lady. If she had at least 100 years, she will even come close to walking on an aristocrat, no matter how hard she tried. And her intentions to participate in his plan converge only to the fact that she just wants to raise the status using the body. Adelaide remembered how Nino shouted loudly that even in her eyes, he seemed miserable because of the money lost. Another time, the client insulted it, calling it a dirty rat and asking if she could normally clean the shoes. There was a situation when a man beat her with his feet, explaining this by the fact that she still did not give a debt over the past week. Adelaide asked for forgiveness to Madame, saying that she knew that she would not get a lot, but she would try. Contrary to understanding, the woman asked loudly how she gathered with such and such efforts to hide her origin. Then she asked if she really thinks that she could deceive the eyes of the people born and grown up in high light, and where she only got the arrogance. Vegetable all her life at the bottom, not even studying the basic norms of decency. Having overpowered herself, Adelaida replied that she had grown without parents and did not receive education, so she could not know everything. However, her brother considered that she was able to spend everyone, although she would take time to study a lot. After all, since he brought her here, it means that this plan could work, even contrary to doubt Madame. The girl decided that she would not break in front of her, and therefore decided to go on the attack, bringing good arguments. Then, Adelaide said that if she thinks that her brother was mistaken in her judgments, she could discuss this with him personally. Cesare was satisfied with his sister's speeches, who proved that he would not be predicted even under such a strict person. The girl added that she never studied and does not know whether her words have passed the face of permitted, so she apologizes. She also hopes that Flavia could forgive her. The woman squeezed the cane tightly, while Cesare grinned. As a friend, a woman turned sharply, pulling a huge hat to her eyes, not wanting to answer Adelaide. The trembling stamped her when she said that she had completely forgotten about the appointed meetings, so she had to leave. Then she quickly headed for the exit, loudly clutching heels, while the man watched her with a smile. Why did he look at Adelaide, saying that his sister was far from a mistake, once he managed to withstand Flavia's attack? The girl thanked him. I hope that he did not see her bruises, because then he could put his claims. However, the man said that, as it turned out, she didn't have such an adaptive character, so she will have not been easy. He is to the fact that, if she were shorter, everything could go much more calmly. But the girl decided not to be silent. And although you can't say it at once, but Madame is a rather sensitive personality, so some words can greatly hurt her. With an indifferent look, Adelaide asked if he wanted to say that she should pretend to be a miserable woman. Cesare smiled, answering that she was already miserable because she was sorry for her life, and it was strange that this fact was unchanged. When a man went to his sister, he proposed to name what is happening a performance, which only the chosen ones know about. Although she can determine what action will become a reasonable choice, without the consequences for both of them. The man lowered his face closer to the girl and asked what she was thinking about it, and the topic is interesting to hear her opinion. Reflecting in his eyes, Adelaide thought that this was a clear provocation, so do not succumb to his comments. Then she bowed, thinking that this was another provocation or a mockery, to once again look at her reaction. Then she said that she would make every effort to live up to his expectations, but she would not become a court jester. Such a statement removed a smile from the face of a man who did not answer this, only carefully glancing at his sister. Then he turned around, heading for the exit, leaving the girl alone with her thoughts, because she has a long way. In the end, he said that they all ceased to be interesting so quickly. Adelaide did not understand what it could mean. The next day, the girl asked Aphonia whether she was seriously returned to engage in her training. Standing in front of the door, the maid asked her not to worry, as she was sure that she was definitely doing perfectly. When they entered the room, Madame Flavia was already waiting for them, looking at the newly entered the girl with an arrogant look. Looking at her, Aphonia said that if the young master decided something, then this must certainly be fulfilled quickly. Flavia crossed her arms over her chest, tightly clutching the pointer in her hand, and silently urging the girl to come closer to her. She stated that Bonaparte is not the name that such as she can wear, since it is not an aristocrat. With a wave of her hand, and she added that the great blue star, talking about her status, would not hang on her chest. The woman was sure that the marine goddess was angry, learning about this, although the master ordered a lady from her. However, she decided that she should teach another lesson, after which she frowned when she ordered her knees. Adelaide could not believe that this would be the first thing she should fulfill, but they still did not even really start. However, Flavia did not want to accept the refusal, because of which she asked if she was deaf, and then repeated the order again. The girl tried to understand why she was taking her anger on her, probably because she is not noble origin, perhaps because she is a dirty shoe cleaner and wants to hurt her with such a relationship, ordering to humiliate herself. But then she chose a completely inappropriate way, because there can be no honor in the knees of shoes cleaners. When she knelt down, the woman went up to her and put her leg on her, simultaneously praising her obedience. Then Flavia stated that she was a product, and to be quietly sold to the Delaval family is her only appointment, and if suddenly she aims at something more, then go to feed sharks, where no one else will remember her. Madame pointed to her with a pointer, saying that this was her place. Adelaide dutifully replied that she understood everything and understood. At that very moment, the woman removed her leg, asking her to get up, as now the lesson, for which they gathered. To begin with, they had to put a gate. After these words, Euphony approached them, carrying a small box in their hands. Flavia explained to fix her curved tread, she would need shoes. Opening the box, the girl found shoes. She could not believe that such beauty would get to her just like that, and the woman clarified that she should only wear them. She had to do this even at a time when she was not in her lessons in order to develop the right gait. Adelaide slightly touched the shoes, unable to believe that she had new shoes, also so high quality. Without wasting time, the girl decided to try on them, trying to stick her leg into shoes, which were smaller in size. At that very moment, Adelaide realized what the catch. Buttoning them, the girl felt the shoes painfully squeezed her fingers. Madame Flavia was quite a look, and therefore smiled, and crossing her arms over her chest, ordered to get up and start walking. Then she waved the pointer, adding that she needed to walk from here to the end of the corridor, which was a short distance. She needs to continue to go until she lets her stop, and now a heavy test will begin for Adelaide. After several unsuccessful attempts to stay on her feet, Adelaide once again fell, painfully hitting the floor. She trembled. Tears came to her eyes when she pulled off her shoes and threw them away, saying that she could no longer. Madame immediately approached her. Ask what she allows yourself during the sacred lesson. No desire to study. Then she screamed angrily that she did not deserve the name of Bonaparte, after which she ordered to get out of here. Suddenly, an evil smirk appeared on her face, meaning that she won, and now she could get rid of the girl. That is how she was going to shout and drive away a dirty bastard. But she got up and continued to walk. The woman's face grimaced again in dismissive expression when she watched Adelaide's successful attempts. Flavia thought that in this way she could get rid of her, but she still shod these unimaginably small shoes. Moreover, this girl has been walking back and forth for several hours without respite, and does not even require a break. With an absolutely indifferent face, Adelaide turned to her, asking her to make another round for fixing. Madame realized that because of her low origin, she stubbornly performs even all stupidity, but there would be enough from her. Turning her head sharply, the woman turned to Euphony, asking her to go out for a while, but she was in no hurry to fulfill the order. The maid apologized. Because the young master ordered not to leave the lady, Flavia replied that she would personally report to him. In order to finally convince her, the woman said that she would not flog the girl, and swore in the name of Lorendon. Unable to say something against, Euphony headed for the exit, after which she closed the door behind her. At that very moment, Flavius turned towards Adelaide and directly said the shoe cleaners to leave the mansion. Having lowered her head, the girl replied that it was radically different from the intention of the master, who brought her here. Madame protested, saying that she was now talking to her, and not with the master, and therefore asks about it. If you compare with Bonaparte, immigrants from the genus de la Valle are not such a chic batch for marriage as you can imagine. They definitely surpass such a lazy and nearby person, and if she understands her position, he will leave. It guarantees its safety, and of course, take care of comforting payment for hasty care. Without changing her facial expressions, Adelaida asked if she wanted her brother to tide herself as a marriage with Lady Lucretia. After all, she thought that Madame arrived here with the intention of fulfilling the will of her brother. But everything was not so. After that, the girl apologized, as she was obliged to inform her brother. For a moment Flavius was very scared. She had nothing left but to say that such is the will of the mistress, and she in no way can go against her word. The woman shouted loudly that the agreement between Della Valle and Bonaparte is an extremely old and now unfriendly story. However, if not for this contract, if the master would marry because many women look at him, however, he will still not settle down and continues to behave like a small child. Because of this, the family can be interrupted. Flavia asked if she now understood that she was getting into the battle of titans, in which she could never win. In response to this, Adelaide bowed low, after which Madame politely thanked for such a warning. Then she raised her head, with a calm look, saying that, contrary to everything, she still could not fulfill her order. Flavia considered her an egoist who was going to bargain, interrupting more money, but she did not even think about it. After that, a small pause came, during which the girl was considering the argument by which she decided to stay. Suddenly, she remembered various dishes and sweets that fed her, saying that she really liked the local food. The woman was surprised by such an answer, and therefore did not immediately understand what the girl was talking about, also with a similar look. Adelaide laid her hand on her chest, adding that, as she said, money and the future. All this is a great luxury for her. For those who can hardly live every day, as if in torture, promises addressed to the future are just a mirage. After all, this is the thing that she cannot eat right now, and therefore she cannot afford to turn off the path. Flavia shouted that she was also proud that she had braided her mind away from hunger, like an animal. Adelaide agreed with her, that she had no choice but to live in this way all this time. She could not fall asleep from hunger, and there were times when she was sitting on the same border of barley bread for a month. She is a desire for definition, worrying only about whether she will be able to eat, so she can answer her with apologies. Although this is an order of Madame, she is not going to leave the Bonaparte mansion until the master personally expels her. On this, their lesson came to an end, after which the woman headed along the corridor, and her mood was spoiled. She thought that the movements of the Adelaides were a little awkward, but even at the same time, she radiated tenderness and elegance. But she was in those uncomfortable shoes, like this is absolutely impossible, so why she continues to fight. Her imagination continues to draw Cesare and Adelaide together, no matter how hard she tried not to think about it. Having gritted an embittered grimace, the woman firmly decided that she should find another way to drive her as soon as possible. A week of classes with Madame Flavia passed. Adelaide did not even have time to realize how one day she replaced the other so quickly. So quickly, the time is warm. The production of speech, etiquette, the introduction of secular conversations, the rules of communication with noble ladies, training of a polite refusal to care for assertive gentlemen, all this girl absorbed like a sponge. However, she still continued to hone the gait in uncomfortable shoes, because of which her legs were given with burning pain. The worried Effie decided to ask, in order. The girl answered in the affirmative, not wanting to give up. However, the maid said that in fact, Madame Flavia probably sees that her gait is already perfect. In addition, her training simply stunes her speed, because any other girl would have surrendered for a long time, half the way. But in the case of Adelaide's, it is enough to explain something only once, and she absorbs all the information as soon as possible. Of course, practice is still required. And however, now no one can think that it belongs to the lowest class. Suddenly, they paid attention to the three ladies who stood near the bridge did not talk, often chuckling at something. Adelaide asked who these girls, because she did not recall that she saw them. Effie replied that they were members of the delegation. When asked why they are in the mansion, the maid replied that she was so busy with training that even the news does not reach her. The maid explained that a few days ago, the second prince had ascended to the throne of Ortonin, thanks to the support of Cesare. Since the prince had no supporters in the palace, he needed considerable efforts, but in the end, everything worked out. In gratitude for the help, the Emperor of Ortonin generously gave the young master for the help that he provided here. That is why today it is extremely lively here, since the servants are also busy dealing with gifts for Cesare. Adelita said that the sphere of influence of her brother is much wider than it seemed to her, and he could affect a neighboring country. Effie confirmed her thoughts, and at the same moment 3 girls drew attention to the Duke, who had just left. The man smiled, and the lady greeted. They immediately began to pester him, saying that they were looking for him everywhere. The favorite of fate and gods, the lady's saint of the Bonaparte clan, a man who is a blessing of the marine goddess. He is the one in whose honor such praises sing, but Adelaide still did not see interest in him. It seems rather devastated, but it is unlikely that this is possible. At that time, Effie offered to return until they were noticed. However, Cesare managed to notice their removing silhouettes, and one of the girls next to him drew attention to this. The man replied that it seemed to him that there was a mermaid, looking around with interest. The blonde did not notice anything. Suddenly, he covered her mouth with his hand and said that there is also one. Such a statement immediately embarrassed the girl. She called him a joker. He only moved closer to that, asking him in her ear whether she would go to him today. Having gained courage, the blonde replied that if he promises to think about them more seriously, she would visit him. Judging by the nonsense, which she began to carry, it was time to give her a lapel, because she seeks to attach importance to the intrigue. Pushing a pause, he took the curls of her hair in his hand, thinking that these golden hair previously seemed to him beckoning. But now this feeling has gone somewhere, and now he represents only Adelaide hair in front of him, which is very strange. After a few seconds, Cesare replied that it was very cute and brazenly. The last word settled in the girl a sense of refusal. When he turned away, the blonde got angry and stated that she would come to him, but he advised her to take her home better. Then he headed for a walk, leaving a sobbing girl surrounded by 2 friends, thinking that it was a continuous boredom. Going on the same one next where Adelaide went, the man thought he had exactly seen that she had gone in this direction. Suddenly, he froze and shuddered, hearing a familiar girlish voice, who loudly urged someone to let her go. Then he noticed that Adelaide was in the fountain, while the man held her hand tightly. A little earlier, the girl, along with the maid, headed for the fountain, while the pain continued to overcome her legs. Suddenly, she stumbled upon a stone. The pain became so strong that she did not hold her balance and collapsed to the floor. Effie ran to her and stated that she would not go, asking for permission to check the condition of her legs right now. Quickly pulling off the shoes, the woman found terrible grater and corns, which covered most of the feet. The maid was shocked by this sight, saying that this is already too much, and she could no longer go in these shoes. Adelaide asked if she had any painkillers, because the medicine could endure the pain. Effie was shocked by her stubbornness, because she did not understand why she continues, because Flavia was not nearby. Clutching the jaw, she rose from her seat, saying that on this they would finish today's lesson and take a break. The woman decided to roll a wheelchair. Until then, the lady can cool her legs in the water to reduce the pain. Without thinking twice, Adelaide dipped her legs into cool water, feeling how a burning sensation began to retreat. The pain recedes thanks to cool water, even if it is not easy. However, in comparison with life in Camorra, these are trifles. Suddenly, she heard a laughter behind me, because of which she shuddered, but she was in no hurry to turn in that direction. 3 men discussed that, even for Bonaparte, opening the heart of a mermaid is too much, and they want to arrange a party. Adelaide was frightened, seeing the nobles who were heading in her direction, but she could not quickly escape. However, she still decided to hide until the men said that today Lady Lucretia had ever seen. The other replied that Mr. Della Valle told her to be calmer, although they seemed to have already decided everything. When they approached, Adelaide managed to hide on the other side of the fountain, eavesdropping on the conversations of the nobles. A minute later, she decided that they had already left, but at the same second she turned her head and noticed the man right behind her. The stranger smiled and grabbed her hand, after which he called his comrades, said that the girl hid in the fountain. The girl tried to break out, but could not maintain balance, because of which she flopped into the water, completely wetting. The comrade told Henry that he was bending the stick, but he replied that he did nothing, and she fell herself without his help. At this time, Adelaide rose, breathing heavily from the water that fell into her mouth, as well as the cold that enveloped the body. The men were surprised at her beauty, after which Henry said that he did not find the girl, but he caught a real mermaid. Then he leaned over and asked who she was. Judging by the missing shoes, nor to the lady nor the lady, she does not look like a lady. He also noticed that for a maid, clothes were too good, so he did not know how to relate to her. With an evil smirk, he asked why she was silent. After all, it was possible to get. But the girl did not speak. Suddenly, the man again grabbed her hands, asking if she was silent, because it was precisely what he dreams of. The comrade asked him to stop, because they are at the Bonaparte estate, and it will be bad if someone finds out about it. Henry turned his head, asking that from that, because he should not think about Bonaparte, even when he touches the maid. After all, Bonaparte is not a king here. The comrade answered him that he was too inflated, and he needs to calm down. Suddenly, Adelaida said that if he pulls a little stronger, then it is likely that her hand would simply tear off. Men immediately fixed her eyes on her, drawing attention to that she speaks like an aristocrat, which strained them. Having frowned, the girl asked to let her go, otherwise they could regret that they could not cope with the consequences. All three were dumbfounded by such a statement, because they did not expect that she could tell him at least something. Henry smiled angrily, asked who she was, because with such rude hands she looks more like a confan. Apparently, she had to go here. And then, there are just a lot of customers with whom you can have fun and earn. Now people like her are grabbing any opportunity to start living better or avoid debts and death. The man began to behave with her rude, while Adelaida repeated that she had asked him to let go, but he did not listen. Henry said that she still could not get a human attitude from Cesare, who probably admires. He did not know what she expected, getting into the mansion. But while he was asking for a good way, she should listen to him. Suddenly, all three heard some kind of clatter behind them, after which they turned nervously, noticing a lonely man. They immediately greeted Mr. Cesare, who smiled, asking, unless there were such, because he heard something else. He heard about this bastard Cesare, but he does not recall about the master, after which he glanced at Henry Fetch. Slowly approaching them, the man said that the head of the Fetch clan would probably enjoy this story about his son. At his age, you have to rush in the sweat of the face to the Bonaparte estate and vice versa, for the sake of trying to take a couple of coins. He is even a Madame Fetch with him. I hope to call to his mercy, but now it is unlikely. Hearing such a statement, Henry began to quickly lose his temper, because of which he decided to attack, but he was kept. The comrades asked him to calm down, after which Cesare said the same thing, because with these words he crossed the border. Contrary to requests, the man went to Henry, after which he put his hand on his shoulder, thereby frightening him and his comrades. With a cold look, he said that treating his younger sister as a confusion, that's what the boundaries are. Henry turned around in shock and looked at the girl, unable to believe that this woman is a younger sister Cesare. Another man, unable to keep curiosity, began to ask what other sister and what all this means. At that very moment, Cesare, without answering, landed next to Adelaide and threw his jacket on her. Then he made an worried look, asking how this could have happened at all that she was in the fountain. The girl did not answer, surprised at such care, after which she sharply looked at three men. They were immediately scared, after which they got the meaning of the phrase that they could regret. And now there was the very moment. Instead of answering Adelaide, his brother asked why he was here, because more recently he was surrounded by a delegation. Suddenly, Henry loudly asked him not to lie, because every fish in the sea knows that he has no sister. At that very moment, Caesar looked menacingly in his direction and replied that it was not, but now it appeared, oddly enough. Apparently, his parents, as before, have a wonderful marital harmony, which is why he had a younger sister. Then he asked if he had to go into explanations to him. Henry flinched, not finding what to answer. Then he stated that there is still no guilt here, because who could recognize the lady in her, looking at this inappropriate look? The man explained that she was sitting here barefoot and all in the wounds. There was no impression that she was from the nobility. Adelaida apologized, because she did not want to disgrace the name Bonaparte and was worriedly practiced. Therefore, her legs were injured. She sent Effany for help, as it was difficult to go, so she had no choice but to sit and wait. However, she did not even think that such a disgusting situation could occur on the territory of Bonaparte. Cesare frowned, after which he lifted his sister in his arms with a sharp movement, looking carefully into her eyes. Then he said that he had asked her not to overdo it, and there was no need to overshadow himself to such an extent for the sake of this. In response, the girl asked that if she became the laughing stock of secular circles, because then the whole clan would disgrace. Gently kissing her forehead, Cesare calmly said that there should not be such conversations between family members. For all her life, she did not hear this even as a joke. But do all the aristocrats behave like that with their loved ones? She became interested in how she reacted a noble family to warm comfort after the stress experienced. Adelaide kissed the man on the cheek, thanking him for his help, because of which he suddenly shuddered from such contact. Then he pulled himself together, answering with a smile that she could turn to him at any time when she needed. Meanwhile, men discussed with interest whether she was really his sister, because they were even like something. They interrupted Cesare, menacingly asked if they still wanted to have fun with his beloved sister. Frightened, all three replied that they were just joking, because they really did not know that she was his younger sister. The man considered that it was interesting, and asked, if she had not been his sister, then such an attitude is quite acceptable. They answered negatively, because it was just a mistake, and they hoped that he could forgive them for this oversight. It so happened that they thought that Adelaide was like a servant, because no one knows that the Duke has a sister. Cesare said that he could also accidentally endure someone. I don't know that they are members of their families, but, since it will be out of ignorance, then he will also be hidden for their forgiveness, because then everything will be absolutely honest. After the conversation came to an end, the Duke decided to take his sister into the mansion, still holding her in his arms. Adelaide tried not to look into his eyes, only tightly squeezing the jacket of Cesare, who continued to warm her. Noticing her movement, the man with a smile asked what was, and whether she was uncomfortable to be in his arms. He asked her to suffer a little, because they almost came. At that time, two girls noticed them behind the tree. When they entered the room, the Duke glanced at her, and then asked why he should deal with a damn thing then. Adelaida apologized, after which she turned her head, adding that she was now getting down so as not to cause him discomfort. But as soon as her legs touched the ground, a sharp pain immediately her whole body, forcing her to stagger and fall to the floor. Looking at this picture, Cesare smiled, saying that it was just a disaster, and her condition leaves much to be desired. When asked where a phony, the girl replied that she could not go, so the maid decided to go for a wheelchair. Looking at the girl's unsuccessful attempts to get up, the man said that they did not agree on this, and their plan could collapse. After all, he does not recall to hire a cripple for this work, which is not even able to walk independently. Adelaida apologized, did not think to drink that she would meet someone, as a friend of a new sharp wave of pain swept her leg. Having a look, she noticed that the Duke presses her foot on her in order to hurt her even more pain. He asked Adelaide what was there for her fantasy, and whether she loves so much to have fun with a bunch of men. But perhaps this is a habit that remained with a slum, because if there is a tool, then anyone will come down to satisfy it. Or there were some other circumstances, according to which all the indecent occurred in the Bonaparte garden. Having trembled, the girl asked if he was trying to say that she seduced those men, voluntarily diving into the fountain. Without changing the stone expression, Cesare replied that she knows better. But she replied that in fact everything was wrong. Hearing such a confident refusal, Cesare grinned, which surprised Adelaide, who did not find anything ridiculous in this. But at the same second, the man made almost a hysterical laughter that lasted a few seconds. The girl was shocked by the like, because she could not understand what was happening in his head, and what made him so laugh. Laughter was slowly subsided, after which the Duke said that Madame Flavia shows himself quite hard next to her. Continuing to put pressure on his leg, he asked that she was not even able to do one thing as it is appropriate to a lady. At least get into verbal battles and shamefully lose. At least achieve their sinking and coquetry with men. After all, she had so many options in her arsenal, but she chose to do nothing, naively waiting for salvation. And in discarding pride and prayers, she is especially good, which should also help her in this situation. Why did he ask why she didn't take advantage of her skills, as she always did, and allowed this? Lying on the ground, Adelaida uncertainly replied that she was wrong, and all this turned out only because of her indiscretion. Turning around, the Duke replied that he was glad that she was aware, but this did not change the fact that some learned it about her. Then, he asked her to treat the wounds so that there were no flaws left, and she was able to move freely. At that very moment, Effie burst into the room, noticing the master, after which the quick gate went to him. She wanted to explain the situation in which the lady was, but he replied that if she wants to explain herself, then later. Before leaving, the man said that classes would be cancelled for 3 days, but he did not name the reason for this decision. When the door slammed shut, the maid drew attention to the girl lying on the floor, suffering from pain. After some time, Cesare sat in his office and smoked a cigar, looking at the personal affairs of specific nobles. He thought that the second son without the right to inherit the genus and just garbage, not able to be a separate unit. Peering into the portrait of Henry, but he asked how this insignificance could create any bad community in the Bonaparte garden. It seems that they have completely lost fear, so he should deal with this matter to the end and punish the perpetrators. Going out onto the balcony, he realized that the plan had already gone awry, but nothing could be done about it. The personality of Adelaide's was revealed, which means it is simply impossible to choose another candidate for the role of his sister. Now he is obliged to make Bonaparte shoes from the cleaner at all costs. But there is not so much time. The morning picture was definitely provocative. Wet emerald hair, like algae on the water surface. White, like salt, skin, excessive, magnificent chest. All this, even unconsciously, could cause a violent reaction in men. Those 3 will surely recall what they saw today and are unlikely to be able to forget about it so quickly. Suddenly, a picture surfaced before his eyes when the girl kissed him on her cheek and thanked for salvation. Although at that moment he himself was a little excited, but this does not change the facts of provocation from his sister. But suddenly the Duke smiled, thinking that even if he pecked, the game would be over as soon as Ezra sees her. At that very moment, he heard so much behind him, after which he ordered to enter. The door opened. Madame Flavia herself. With an ever-arrogant look, the woman greeted the Duke, who was in no hurry to reciprocate. After a small pause, Cesare turned in her direction and then headed towards her, thereby heating the situation. He said that he was not worried about how she teaches that despicable, but he would prefer that she would not be zealous. The woman worshipped dutifully, after which she asked for forgiveness. I hope that she would not get something more seriously. But then the Duke frowned, menacingly asking him not to annoy him again, otherwise she could greatly regret it. Flavia shuddered when he added that she was a wise woman, so he should understand what he was trying to say. When the woman came out, she thought that this was the cleaner of the shoes of cunning, and she knew what she was going on. Obviously, she deliberately hazed herself until she trampled all her legs, so she will fall out of disgrace. At this time, a delegation of 3 girls discussed that the master had a lover, and they say that she was barefoot. Cesare would not contact a noble lady, but in any case, they have far from the most common relationship. They entered the main wing together, and Cesare was more affectionate than usual, although he had not previously let the girls into the main wing. Suddenly, the red-haired girl jumped sharply, asking loudly who she was, because curiosity burst her. Turning around, she loudly told everyone that Genevieve did not feel it, so she would have to return home. One of the friends pretended to be believed, so she smiled politely and wished her to be careful during the journey. The girl ran down the bridge, along with the way to the friends of the word of farewell, not even hearing a response farewell. One of the friends asked, "It was still normal. Why suddenly she?" The other replied that she was just pretending. Meanwhile, the red-haired girl thought that she needed to report this as soon as possible. Lady Lucretia. She wrote that autumn was in full swing, and the day when her house arrest will end is far from the corner. She will be shocked, but Genevieve cannot but tell her that a gloomy cloud hung over the future lady. Today, the ladies told her when they gathered at the Bonaparte estate in order to admire the mermaid's heart. She found out that Mr. Cesare was found with a girl in her arms, which he brought right into the main wing of the mansion. How many again Mr. Cesare intends to pierce her friend's heart with a knife in order to finally be satisfied? And moreover, what kind of shamelessness this, licked him, Genevieve, wants to meet with a lady rather and give comfort. As soon as the letter was completed, the girl handed it over to the servant, asking him to immediately send him Della Valle. After some time, Lucretia received a letter from her friend, after which he began to study him, trying not to miss anything. As soon as she finished, the letter immediately went to the fireplace, so that no one else except her could read it. Then she asked Cesare that for unusual nonsense was contained in this letter, and whether he was going to experience it again. Meanwhile, people whispered about the last news, about the same rumor that blossomed incredibly quickly. Allegedly, Mr. Cesare hides a woman in the main wing. No one knows who she is, and most importantly, who he is. 3 days ago, when a delegation from Orkanen arrived from a demonstration of the mermaid's heart, they saw how he carried a girl in her arms. Moreover, one girl heard that Henry Fetch fully paid for attempts to pester a woman Cesare. It must be true. It was not without reason that Bonaparte was trimmed from the Fetch family of the entire huge amount of investment in business. Everyone around asked who she was. Will decide that this girl, who sincerely fell in love with Cesare Bonaparte. The next day, Flavia decided that she refused to continue to endure the Gudelinschik, the wave of the honor of the Bonaparte clan. I'm walking along the corridor. She thought that it was necessary to get rid of this insidious and impudent shoe cleaner as soon as possible. Without wasting time, the woman rudely opened the doors, attracting the attention of Adelaide, which was waiting for her arrival. At that very moment, the true aristocrat looked at her, who greeted the woman, asking about her health.